really good friend. You see? So my understanding that Trench Town, people were singing every day, people was making music, and all these things was happening.
But you see, Bob was very different from most of the musicians that were in town. You see, Bob had a part of the country in his life already, which in most of the musicians in the town, they haven't been to country, they don't know what it's about.
All his aim, his desire was in music, nothing else, you know, nothing else really that he was interested in. Besides, you know, music, that was his main thing.
Bob finished school at 16, and Peter and all of them, very young age. They did not go on to further education. They did not have time to read books to enhance their vocabulary anymore. So they were just, he was very interested in world affairs. He'd read the papers every morning, and so he was very much tuned into how the world was going. But that doesn't mean that he was an intellectual.
He was more educated from the street. He really learnt what he needed to learn. You know, inspiration instead of education is how he liked to put it. He was hanging out with, you know, the gangs, what later became known as Rude Boys. He was playing football on the street, hanging out on the street, hearing music on the street. I mean, that's it. Most of his education came from there.
Bob took his first job as an apprentice welder. However, after an accident that filled his right eye with metal, he became determined to make it as a singer. Bob and Bunny, along with another teenager, Peter McIntosh, formed the Wailing Rude Boys, who later became known as the Wailers. Their first song, Simmer Down, was an instant #1 in Jamaica. Early Wailers songs were based on the popular dance music style of ska. Over time, the Wailers slowed down the beat, preferring the slower, bass-heavy sound of reggae.
Why boasted thyself, O evil man?
You had ska, first of all, which was quite up, frantic, but then it was about mid-60s and it was really hot, and ska proved to be a little bit too energetic to leap about to, so it kind of slowed down and it turned into rocksteady, which was like the link between ska and what became known as roots reggae, which is when it really got slow. And I think that's when like the ganja was kicking in as well, and it was kind of a slow evolution. The very soul of reggae music was from the Crown Nation ceremonies, which the Rastafarians used to just chant. They call it Rastafarian hymns. They sing these old songs over drumming. There'd be like 20 drummers just playing this kind of heartbeat. It was based on a heartbeat. They'd be chanting away like this and listening to American R&B, like popular US hits of the day. Somewhere along the line, the two combined. But reggae was a very slowly evolving thing.
Bob Marley started understanding the ska days, ching, ching, and then go to the rocksteady, you know, and then the reggae slow down, yeah? And it's like, you play reggae music in Jamaica those days, it's like you're calling the police, because reggae music starts to play amongst a lot of Rasta people. A lot of people say it's devil music, and you can't play reggae music.
The other change was more spiritual than musical. After the 1966 state visit of Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie to Jamaica, the Wailers became deeply involved in the Rastafarian movement. Bob and the Rasta elders prophesied that Jesus would come again, but in another name. He believed that the powers of the West were being deceived by looking for the Redeemer in the name of Jesus.
That first night we
Blessed be His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie, Jah Rastafari, who liveth and reigneth with I and I continually, ever faithful, ever sure. Jah Rastafari, with no apology. And this is the Rastaman vibration.
Rasta is something from the heart. Rastafari is not like a religion. It's like more like a concept for the people, something to believe in. Growing up as a Rasta, when the parents say, go and cut your trim your boy, you know, it was a problem. See, because everybody's supposed to look like American Jerry Curl and, you know, most Jamaican people are slaves, like, come from Africa as slaves. So you find the Rasta people, well, it was more like the underprivileged, you know. Rasta was really, well, like a burden to the society. The policeman in Jamaica now, well, there was more racism with them. You see, because if you're a Rasta, you talk about Rasta and a policeman catch you, you're going to jail.
The police gave us a hard time. There was roadblocks everywhere. It was very, very difficult. Taxis wouldn't stop for us. He'd say, Esther, you go and stand in the street and they'll stand for you. For example, his car would break down and things like that, and he can't get it fixed. And so it was really very odd.
Rastafarianism is very popular in Jamaica, yet in Canada, the United States, it has a bad reputation. People are associated with drugs and the trafficking of marijuana and violence, police arrest.
Yeah, man, them crucified Christ, remember? Christ was a Christian and them crucified Christ, him is not what it is.
No, but let's go back to the facts. People have been arrested, and the Rastafarians in Toronto, for example, have a very bad reputation.
I mean, you know, I wouldn't say that the Rastafarians have a bad reputation. I would say people give the Rastafarians bad reputation because the Rastafarians, all of these things happening before the Rastafarians even start coming to Canada anyway around here.
But the things that are very obvious are things like the way you look. Right? To most people who are very conservative in dress, you look quite strange. Plus the fact that you advocate smoking marijuana.
Yeah, you dig this. I'll show you this now. Could they tell God that it's not legal?
No, but
they couldn't tell God that it's not legal.
You have a very strong religious belief, but other people don't necessarily share that. And what they see are the obvious things. And isn't it, in fact, true that many Jamaican people get involved in the trafficking of marijuana and therefore get the bad reputation associated with Rastafarians?
People get trafficking. You see, I don't really know anything about those parts of life, you know. All I know about is Rastafari, you know, and try bringing this truth to the people. What the people do with them life, I don't really know about that. I know about my own.
There you are, crying again for your loveliness, won't cover your shame. There you are, you're taking true love, and while you're taking true love, you give them the blame.
Music producer Lee Perry was Jamaica's answer to Phil Spector. In 1969, he recorded a series of sessions with the Wailers. Perry, believing the masters to be his, took them to London and sold them.
For 10 years, he said they worked and worked and worked and never had a penny. All their music was pirated.
Lee Perry had already been quite successful in his own right. He already had a reputation as a nutcase. It was traditional that the producer took all the money and the artist basically got a pittance. And this happened with the Wailers for some years. They had to go through what every artist in Jamaica has to go through, which is getting ripped off stupid.
The Wailers were furious, but ironically it was this betrayal which brought them to the attention of Esther Anderson and her partner Chris Blackwell of Island Records.
When I came to England and studied acting at the Actors Workshop, when I finished drama school, I did all the usual things like Dixon of Dark Green, The Saint, Danger Man, The Avengers, all this kind of work that was available for black people, which was not a lot at the time. Eventually did a film with Sidney Poitier, which won the Image Award for me and gave me an Oscar nomination. And I grew up in England struggling to actually express myself because there wasn't that much work. But alongside that, I was helping to introduce our music here through Island Records and my partner to bring out the music from Jamaica. We started Island Records here in England. It seemed at the time an impossible sort of dream, but between my partner and myself, it was just a little mini. We went from record shop to record shop, and I would go and I would bombard everybody with the records. We started out like that, and eventually people started buying the records. It was always on a sale and return basis, so it was 25 years it took. We worked very hard and we achieved our goals. I mean, we were one of the first independent labels, so it was kind of like a revolution that took place and gave the industry, you know, something that the young people, young musicians could then take control of their lives and be freer to express themselves.
What Bob was losing out financially, he was gaining in finding his feet, studio experience, and then Chris Blackwell noticing and signing him up. And it has to be taken into account that when Blackwell signed him, Island was not a reggae label, reggae was not popular.
I known Jimi Hendrix, right? And Bob reminded me of Hendrix. But I knew with Bob and the Wailers, not Bob alone, but Bob and the Wailers as a group, strong.